Okay, so we are live. Thank you everyone for joining. So if you're watching this live, appreciate your time. If you are watching on the replay, I hope you get everything from this. It's such an interesting conversation. So I will introduce my guest. So Tünde. Yeah. Okay. Still not great at pronunciation. We just had this conversation offline.
Yeah.
So
it's always good to practice. So it's fine.
Yeah, exactly. So one day I'll get them all right. So, so I always say that I never actually introduce you, my guest. I always prefer that you introduce yourself, just some background, some context so people know, because you know the highlights of your life and what you want to share. And I don't think I ever do it full justice. So would you just mind introducing yourself? Just give some background of who you are and what you do.
It's always tricky with introductions, right? Because you want to make it as short as possible, because not everybody's interested in your entire life. So then what do you say, like in an elevator pitch? What can you say in like 30 seconds about yourself so you wouldn't be super boring, and let's just get to the interesting stuff, right?
Yeah.
So I will just say that my purpose as an emotional intelligence and leadership coach, because that's what I do, and I also facilitate besides coaching and sometimes consultation, but my main thing is coaching. Is to help leaders and entrepreneurs and startup founders develop their relational skills, develop their decision-making skills, develop their social skills, and everything that has to do with building a wholesome life and business. Because all these skills are so much needed, yet they are so overlooked. Right, when we first set up our business, we focus on having money, on making money, and we need that obviously to have a business running well. But we overlook the human part of things, the fact that we build our businesses on with humans, and we need the social skills and emotional intelligence skills that help us build our business. Because if we don't understand people, how can we understand business? We build businesses with people, right? So this is what I do. I work one-on-one with them. My favorite way of working with entrepreneurs, leaders, and startup founders and politicians is my next step, is that I work one-on-one with them. Because I think this, what gets to be done in a safe, confidential place is really amazing. When we build a relationship based on trust and psychological safety, that's where change and improvement really occurs. So that's my purpose, to do my best to help as many entrepreneurs and founders as possible to develop these skills, because we rarely fail because of strategy. Most of the times we fail because of these skills lacking, and it's not even because we don't want to do them right, or we don't want to communicate well or effectively, we don't want to build relationships. It's not that. It's because we don't know how to do that. How do you build effective relationships? What does it even mean to communicate effectively? What do you mean that, it has to be congruence between what I'm communicating? So all these things, it has to do with not knowing, not with not wanting, most of the times. So that's where I come in. I give my full support to develop these emotional intelligence skills. That, by the way, is not about being emotional, but I think we're gonna get there too. Yeah. So they can do their very best and raise good businesses, sustainable businesses, and create impact. Why not? Because that's the point, to create positive impact in society. And this is not like a magic pill or, hyped up or hot air. It's just super practical things that we can all learn. It's learnable, it's doable, and it's improvable. I may have made up some new verbs here, but you get the point. So This is what I'm passionate about. I could say a lot of things, but I think what we are most passionate about speaks the most. Yeah. So this is what I do.
That was amazing. The only trouble with your introduction for me is that there is so many places for me to go with this conversation. So first of all, I would say that I selfishly want to have this conversation because I know we spoke before, but emotions is one of those things that was kind of absent in my childhood. And that, when I say that, oftentimes it's this, people think about neglect, etc. But so I'll paint the picture of my house. So my dad went to work every day. My mum was a housewife. So this is, going back, that was quite a traditional way of being. My mum, there was me and my brother. We were raised together. My mum was a super amazing mum. But the understanding and the emotion side of things was kind of very flat. There wasn't big arguments. Everything kind of went on very easily, very smoothly. Occasionally, my dad would get angry about something, probably stressed through work. We don't really know. I talked about this yesterday, but ultimately, I think he wanted to try and protect any stress from work coming in to home. So I think this is another thread that we'll probably talk about in a second. But I had this very flat line of emotions. I didn't really understand what they were. Now, the challenge for me is that life has emotions all through it, and I assumed that everything needed to be happy. But I've come to realize in my own journey that all these emotions, the emotions aren't good or bad. They're emotions. And whereas I assumed shouting or anger was a bad emotion, but it's not. It can be a release. It can be a way to engage. And it's just sometimes how we reframe or think about emotions. So again, I've been on my own journey. I've been to therapy, which again, I think is an amazing thing, because it doesn't mean that you can't handle the world. It just means that you're on a discovery and you're trying to understand something's not quite connecting. And it takes bravery to go into to say that, okay, something's not quite right, and to discover.
Right.
So I'm being quite selfish, because I'm really interested in emotions, but overlaying that, how emotions actually show up or don't show up. And when I say don't show up, is that we're avoiding them, or we're covering them up, or suppressing them, especially in business. I realized how important this is. So oftentimes it's the things that we don't say that we should be saying, or acknowledging it. And in my case, I think I didn't know that they were there. So this kind of ties into how you were explaining in your introduction of how things work. I'm a big believer in the school system doesn't actually teach us what we should learn, because I'm now a parent, and no one teaches you to be a parent. You just try and do the best job that you can, try to instill some good values and some so manners and some good values is something that I try to teach the children. But no one taught me to be a parent. So I'm either going to do it the way that my parents taught me, or I'm going to do the opposite because I didn't agree with it. And then sometimes that leads to something else. But then in school, we're told we don't talk about emotions. We have biology, chemistry, all sciences, etc. But we never talk about emotions. And so we almost go through all our lives. We might have had some event through our life, so that makes us feel that being open or connecting with our emotions is not okay. And oftentimes that's about the other person, not ourselves. So I feel that we go and we're often told not, or we're told to suppress our emotions, or we're trained to do that through society, through just feeling uncomfortable with it, or so many things. Then we end up being in work, and then we get this message of leave your emotions at the door. We don't want you to bring your emotions, because, and I understand that on one side, you don't want people to bring, and I think there's this connotation of emotions equals drama equals problems.
Right.
And that's not what it is for me. That's what I've started to understand, is actually this world of emotions is really an untapped talent, a thing that you can connect with, that's going to tell you things are okay, things are maybe not okay, and to understand what they are. And if you actually understand them, it can lead to so much enjoyment in work, etc. So I've spoken for a long time. I know there's probably many things you can either correct me on or pick up on. I don't know which is the best way that you prefer to go, but I feel that there's so much in this world of emotions that we either don't understand, we've been disconnected from one way or another.
Right.
And actually your help and the way that you do things and can really unlock all of that. And it can be such a great thing in business. So what do you think? Anything that I've said that you would disagree with? Anything that you would think that you needs to be improved on or explained a bit further? What's your take?
I really, really like your curiosity. I think that's the first step, to be curious about what's going on also inside, because we can many times understand like what's going on outside and what are the things that we have to do in business, but what's going on inside and how does the inside world impact the outside world, right? Now you have said many, many interesting things, and I love that you've shared also personal experiences. But I'm going to challenge you there, because you've said many things. I'm going to challenge you to ask a question, an actual question that I can actually answer, because otherwise we run the risk that I share, in all directions. So I'm curious, from what you've shared, all the valuable things that mean so much to you, what is one thing that you would like to ask now about emotions?
So in my personal opinion, why don't people share emotions? Why do you think the biggest thing is that they don't? Something tells me about fear. That's what's sitting in my brain. Is it fear of being judged? Yeah. Why aren't people bringing emotions?
I think there can be many things. If I learned something throughout the years, is to be very, very humble when labeling things. So I know that in our society, it's really trendy and cool to simplify things and to say the reason you're doing that is because of that. Well, if you say that often enough, you might be right about somebody. But what I've learned is that you have to find out the cause for everyone, because it can be different based on their background, based on their experiences. So we're going to just look at it from above and just imagine some of the things, because when people say leave your emotions at the door, this is in the business world, but as children, we were taught, don't show your emotions, don't cry, don't laugh too much, don't smile, say this, do that. We have all these instructions since we're born, and obviously some of them are good, so we shouldn't just dismiss them. When we teach our children, hey, have manners, it's not a bad thing. But what we're also missing, because I'm a mom as well, and I have a teen at home, so things become very intense in teen years. What we're missing out on is to explain also, how do you process what you feel? Instead of suppressing it, how about we talk about it in a more appropriate moment, for example? So people say, leave your emotions at the door. What does that mean? It means, many times it can mean, don't bring your personal issues, your personal drama, like you said, to the workplace, which is not a bad thing. We don't want to have all the drama. But what's happening if we do that? I mean, can we actually switch off our emotions and then switch them on when we get out of the boardroom? How does it work? I'm very, very curious for people to explain it to me. Like, how do you do it? And I have an example here. Back in the day, I was working at a company, and we had this manager. He was a brilliant guy, really respected him. And he was this type of guy of leave emotions at the door. So, when I first heard that, I thought, okay, wonderful. I like rational people very much. I'm not drama-oriented and all that. So I thought, okay, cool, we're going to have a great conversation. But what I've noticed with him and with many others who tend to say leave the emotions at the door, that when there were certain arguments that he wouldn't agree with, or there was a different direction suggested that he wouldn't agree with, he was the first one to show emotion, and he got angry. So then, the question arises, what did you mean when you said emotions at the door? Like, we should detach? Should we not share when we disagree? Should we not tell you how we feel and think about things? What should we do when you say that? So it's interesting to notice what happens, or if they actually can manage that, to leave the emotions at the door, then they seem like they are robots. And that's where people say he does not care or she does not care. It's just about getting things done. So you see, it's extremes. What we're noticing around us, or as far as I've noticed, it's many extremes. It's either people are super blank and they don't want to show anything, but then they don't show anything, which harms relationships and business, or they show too much and they, explode on an emotional level. So maybe we go back to the thing, what if we learned how to manage our emotions and distinguish between what we need in the moment, what we actually can use, emotional information that we can use to our benefit, and what is not okay to be shared. So that takes some digging deep, right? It takes some understanding of your own emotions and then of other people's emotions. It takes your ability to read the room and act accordingly, and be able to, notice as a leader or as a parent what's happening and what's a better approach in this situation than to just say, I don't care. Because we don't know how to handle that. But what happens when we learn? And we can get into that as well. What changes when we learn, and so on and so forth. So what comes to mind when you hear this, what I said so far?
So I actually have a similar example where I worked for a boss, and he said the same thing. Yeah, just there's too much emotions here. But then actually got quite angry and shouted, and at certain situations where for me, people were just trying to help. I know that there were stresses obviously in their life, but it was exactly like you said, and it was like, and I came to understand that person didn't. It was like this binary thing, no emotions, as in no, because they couldn't maybe understand for themselves, so they didn't want to accept it from anyone else. But the reality is there are emotions in everything, right? And it's so then as you were talking, it was really interesting because you sort of said, well, what's almost the rules around emotions? And then I was thinking, can you as a company set up rules? Because for me, emotions is not something that just fits into a box. I don't know if that's the way that my mind thinks about these things, because emotions don't have edges. They're like, okay, sometimes they're shifting, and I don't know if that's maybe just because I don't fully understand myself or the emotions and stuff. But then, is it possible to introduce some rules around emotions in companies? Well, have you ever done that? Is that something that's even possible to do?
So there is such thing as emotional culture in a company.
Okay.
So the way leaders transmit this emotional culture and set the groundwork for that is through their body language, through their tone of voice, through their facial expressions. Because what I want to mention here is that sometimes people think, okay, we're not going to express our emotions, so we're all safe. What happens is when you look around in the room, and I had this experience with an entrepreneur, I went in with him with his team, and he was like, I'm really annoyed by the team. And I said, what makes you annoyed? Because, none of them said anything wrong verbally. He was like, but it was that feeling. And I said, what feeling? So we started digging deeper. And what was happening is that we noticed body language. We noticed the non-verbal communication of people, which cannot be turned off unless you have some sort of, you're a pathologic liar, or you have some sort of, mental situation. Normally, as humans, we cannot, switch it all off. The limbic system will still react because that's where the emotional centers are. So we are going to react one way or another, right? You have seen these kind of type of expressions when they don't agree. They're like, or
Yeah.
Right. So we notice these kind of things and we're bothered by them. Or many leaders don't notice them, don't care, and they miss out on enormous information that could actually help them make better decisions. So it's about learning how to read the emotional information and use it. Because when you notice that in an employee, for example, or a business partner you want to, do a partnership with, they will share with you on a non-verbal level what's going on, even if they don't say it, because they don't want to hurt your feelings. They don't want to, not agree with you because they care too much and so on. So we forget about this part. This part is a very important thing as well. So no, I don't think we can switch off emotions. It will come out one way or another. And when we notice that, we're bothered by it, even if we don't know. And it's very, very important to understand that all decisions we make, the rational ones and the strategic ones, they all involve emotions. In fact, if there is a sickness, I don't remember the name of it right now, but when some people have an injury, for example, in the part of the brain that is responsible for the emotions, or they are born with certain defects in that area, they can't make the smallest decisions. Like, do I drink coffee this morning or do I drink tea? Should I wear the purple blouse? Should I wear the blue blouse? They can't make decisions. Emotions are very, very important also in strategic decision making. And not being aware of it is worse than being aware and managing them. So then we go to the part of how do we manage emotions? How do we regulate emotions? Like you said, should we put them in a box, or is it just, they do whatever they want? Neither, I think, because it's not about the emotions doing whatever they want. It's not about putting them in a box either. And I have an analogy that I used to share also with my clients and with everyone I meet. And the analogy has to do with dogs. Do you have dogs? Did you ever have a pet dog?
No, never had pets other than a goldfish that didn't live for that long. But
then let me share this. Maybe you can imagine it, or maybe you've seen it with a friend. We had our first dog in 2020. So then it hit me. So here's the analogy. When dogs are small, puppies, right? We buy them when they are puppies, and then we want to train them. But when they are puppies and you walk down the street with them, this crazy thing happens, right? When they pull, they see another dog, they pull. They don't want to go, in the same pace as you are, they pull. They see a distraction or something happens, noise or something, they pull, they bark, they go crazy. It's very, very annoying, and you have no idea what to do in that moment. It's like, what now? So this is puppies. They are unpredictable. They do crazy stuff. The consequences, you don't know. Sometimes they might pull you so strongly you fall, or they run away. Then you have to go find them. It's all a mess, right? So now that you have this image, on the other end, imagine a German Shepherd, right? We know German Shepherds are smart. They are good dogs. Imagine a German Shepherd that's trained, not a puppy, because when they are puppies, they are the same. When they grow up and they are trained, they go at the same pace. When they see something, they want to bark, but you just pull the leash, they listen. It's not that unpredictable. It's like, you know how to handle it. You know what's going to happen and how to pull the leash and when and how and in what circumstances. How does your dog react? What triggers the dog and what doesn't? Because different things trigger different dogs.
Yeah.
Does it land in you? Because
so I'm getting this image of just the puppy's just going to run everywhere. It's uncontrollable, and then just the work that you can do on understanding your emotions and not training them as in they don't exist, but understanding them and allowing them to seeing when they show up. And I think not controlling. I'm not sure I like the word controlling that I'm saying. It just understanding it and using it and following it. And yeah, I think
because
that's much.
they do exist, right?
Yeah.
I've mentioned that the trained German Shepherd will still try to react. You can't take that out, from the dog, unless, I don't know, but generally no. So these are our emotions. One is unpredictable. You don't know what could happen. Few triggers down the line, in the boardroom, in the meeting, triggers happen and the leader explodes because the others are too afraid to explode. But sometimes even employees, depending on their personality. Whereas on the other hand, when they are trained, what happens with that guy when he talks and you don't like him. You don't like. We can't like everybody. He's very, very annoying when he comes up with all these ideas that make no sense, have not grounded in facts. What do you do then? You're annoyed. So then you reflect on that beforehand. You prepare yourself, and of course this takes practice. It's not going to happen from one day to another to change habits and reactions that we have. But because it's happening, you can train your emotions to react differently. And instead of saying you're so annoying, you always ruin the meeting, you can say something, hey, I hear you. Is it okay if we talk about this later maybe? Or ask a question that could clarify that he would realize that, what he's saying is actually not that smart. So, we have to also be realistic. These kind of things happen. So to say that, if I learn this, then everything is going to be great. No, things are unpredictable with emotions. But by knowing yourself really well, by knowing how to regulate in very difficult situations when you get a very bad news, right? It's not about lying or hiding them. It's about knowing your responsibility. And I speak, especially to leaders and entrepreneurs, because you cannot just throw your emotional things on people. It's important that you regulate and then make sure you process those in a safe place. Or say something smart like, hey, this is a very bad moment for me. Is it okay if we talk later on? Then to explode and regret it later, right? So this has to do with impulse control, with avoiding or delaying an emotional reaction to a trigger or to something that has happened.
Yeah. Right? So again, I'm reminded of this situation when this previous boss, he lost it, and the ripple effect that had on the people around, it wasn't okay. Again, it was kind of out of context. But then I'm thinking, so the work that I did on with therapy allowed me to understand that everyone has triggers, and this was really because you just mentioned it a second ago, and I think if you have this awareness, and I keep coming back to this thing about awareness being a superpower, because I think if you're aware of what goes on for you, if there's triggers, there's emotions, what you like, what your energy's like, a whole load of things. If you can just create that, it can even just be like a microsecond, just to be kind of curious, go, oh, what's going on? You can, if I say stop yourself, it's not about not having the emotions, but it's just creating this tiny pause to go, oh, what's coming up, rather than just go into the default trigger action. So, okay, I don't like it, so I'm going to shout or something. Just creating that tiny gap, and that can be the difference between having a successful conversation or not, because the repair often that you have to do when you're triggered and something comes out as a default, often that creates this strange dynamic. Then you have to apologize, then you feel weird about it. And I'm just thinking of situations in my own life, I think about this with the kids actually. So recently I was starting to shout at them, losing my temper, and I didn't like it. I didn't like how I was showing up, because oftentimes they hadn't really done anything too bad. But then I started to be curious of why I was doing that. And then I realized, oh, I'm tired. I need to take a break. Oh, okay. and I was starting my own business, so I was feeling quite sensitive about setting up things and being rejected. And so I was bringing that into those moments where I've asked the kids to do something twice and then they haven't done it, and all of a sudden I'm shouting at them, and then I feel terrible. Guilt plays a big part in that. And then so I started to just understand what my energy was, how I was showing up. And then, please don't get me wrong, I'm not saying I've mastered this, but I've realized that actually this is so much better if I can feel what my emotions are, feel what triggers are coming up, see, okay, it could be as simple as I haven't had enough sleep. So when I haven't had enough sleep, that my sensitivity levels go up, and something yesterday when I had loads of sleep was no problem, but today it's like an irritant sitting in my body, and so I'm much more reactive. But having that tiny moment of pause can really have a big impact, because it leads to what actions are going to happen next. And it's not about being perfect, it's not about getting it all right, because I think if you're trying to do that, again, you mentioned about being robot, we're not robots, we're humans. Sometimes these things have to come out. And again, I sometimes assume being angry as in being a bad emotion, but it's not. Maybe it's something that needs to come out, needs to be said, and you haven't said it. And I think we can talk about suppressing emotions in a second, because I think that's something that's actually probably even shows up more often than not, or doesn't show up. It actually happens and we're ignoring it. But just having that moment of pause can really change the dynamic, change the direction of the interaction you're having. And you know, you talked about working with leaders, and oftentimes, obviously, depending on the structure of the company, the leaders have this impact on people, and that can impact so many people's lives, maybe not even just in that day, but in that week, and in the way that they want to show up in business. It can create, don't like working with the boss. And I don't want to catastrophize it, but the awareness up front, and if you understand what's going on for you, put that pause in, it can have a dramatic effect in my mind. And you know, please correct me if I'm making this bigger than it should be, but there's so much value in that, for not only for yourself, but the people in your company.
Right. Emotional awareness is so important, and that's where it starts, but it's not where it ends. So if we are aware of things, but we don't know how to express ourselves, or we don't know how to draw boundaries, which is a very important part in getting exhausted as leaders, because, you know, leaders are people as well. I mean, I am the first to say, hey, as leaders, we need to, bring order into our lives. We need to take out mess. We saw so many examples what happens when, leaders live a messy life. Eventually, that personal life goes into the business and the business fails, which is such a pity, right? So what happens is that leaders need to understand, hey, you're humans as well. You need to work on yourselves as well, just like, everyone else, if you want to do a better job. And it's even more important for leaders because there are consequences, greater consequences. First of all, on people around you. And second of all, on your business. Because it's easy to become successful. It's harder to stay successful. It's harder to stay on top where, everybody's looking at you all the time. That's pressure. Your decisions mean something. That's pressure. Based on what you decide, things can go bad or right, wrong or right. That's pressure. All that pressure is built up. If you suppress all the emotions that come with it, it's not if, it's when things are going to unfold, not in the way that you want to sometimes. So it's about also how we learn to become aware, what the triggers are, what's happening in our lives, both personally and professionally. It's many times I say, people imagine that you can cut yourself in half. The professional Tünde goes to work the personal Tünde stays at home. But it's not like that. If personal Tünde has an issue at home, I can go with that to work if I'm not careful. If I get annoyed with my teen, I can bring that to work, and that's unfair to the people. Whereas I can understand myself, hey, that's, this is what happened. I can deal with that later on. But now it's other people. It's a different setting. It's not fair to them. It's a responsible reaction, and looking at the context and being aware that these people have no clue with what's happening, and they don't have to have a clue because it's your problem, right? So don't bring the anger or the frustration to work or into your team. So that's where you regulate and you actually change the narrative in your mind and say all the things that I said, and instantly almost you can change how you feel, because you can change how you feel, by the way. When I think about my team or a client I'm meeting, I get excited and I'm thinking, okay, let's see what's going to happen today. And I can't feel two emotions at once. I can't be frustrated with what happened before and also be excited. So, I pick this one because this is in the present. If it's something very, very bad that cannot, you have to deal with, then share with the people, hey guys, something has happened. Is it okay if we talk about this tomorrow? Because I'm not in a good place, right? So it's about noticing and being able to express yourself in a healthy way, in a way you don't, destroy everyone, in a way you don't lie, in a way you don't, you don't hide, because people can see when you're not honest. They can see it on your face. So it's important that we're honest, but we also say it with boundaries. Honesty and vulnerability is not without responsibility. It's not about overloading your team with things that, it doesn't concern them. It's about drawing the right boundaries and knowing how much access can you give to people. Because healthy boundaries have to do with how much access we give to people based on how responsible can they be with the access we give them. That's why we decide how much access do I give to this friend, how much access do I give to this team member, how much access do I give to my business partner. And you have to be able to express those boundaries. Hey, I'm not really comfortable when you say that or when you do that in front of the team. So I would appreciate it if you don't. So you don't. That's assertiveness. Assertiveness is the little line between being aggressive or passive. Passive aggressive people, we see them there. They don't like what's happening, but they just hold it all in, right? And then we know that sometimes down the line it is gonna explode. Or aggressive people, they just go ahead and burn bridges with no problem whatsoever, right? So or others. A third extreme is when we're super empathetic. We always understand people, which is a wonderful trait, a much needed leadership trait, right? All we see everywhere on social media is all we need in leadership is empathy. Well, I don't think so, because if you're only understanding everyone and only empathizing with everyone, you will not get anything done. You will just empathize with people, which is wonderful, but it's just part of the equation. You also need to empathize when it's the case, but you also have to give clear guidelines, clear expectations, what's okay for you and what's not, and said in a very healthy and congruent way. You don't have to be aggressive to draw the line. You can do it in the right way. And then comes, other issues with, after you learn how to express yourself, then how do you build good relationships? And we need both empathy and assertiveness to build good relationships. And then how do you make decisions when emotions are involved? When you notice the emotions, you notice, things in your team. And many times we just, get all worked up instead of addressing it and say, hey, I'm noticing you don't really agree, or you don't seem to agree with what I'm saying. What's going on? What's making you not agree? What's happening? Maybe there's an actual good idea in that person, something you have not thought of. Instead of building up a negative assumption and thinking, oh, okay, this guy doesn't agree again. It's not about that. It's about finding out, right? And then dealing with that And then being able to be independent as a leader and say, okay, I get that, but ultimately I'm going to have to make the decision, just so everyone is on board. Okay. Yeah. So all I'm sharing have to do with practical emotional intelligence skills and competencies.
Yeah, it's again, you say so much that I want to talk about, because it's I want to say it's complex. It's much more complex than we think, but there's huge value in it. So I think this. So I have this person in my life, and she's very kind to herself. She understands her emotions very well, connected with what's going on for her, and people are just drawn to her because she's very kind and she shows up in just a very authentic way. And I've watched her for a while, and people really resonate with her because she's kind to herself. What I've found in many other people is they're not kind to themselves. They beat themselves up about a lot of things, and then people react differently. So having this moment, as you said, just to I'm thinking again in business, if you're a boss and a leader, it can be quite a lonely place. Sometimes you're put on a pedestal, and that you're supposed to be resilient and make all the decisions. Oftentimes these people don't have an outlet to talk about things, or sometimes they feel that they can't express anything. But that example of you said, just say, hey guys, I'm having a bad day. Can we talk about this tomorrow? Or just please be aware something's going on. Again, that's not an oversharing. You're not bringing, it might be something in their personal life. They're not bringing that, whatever's going on in their personal life, but they're bringing an awareness to the other people. And that has a big impact, because oftentimes, and you said about assumptions, people assume all the time, and assumptions are often incorrect based on their own prejudice or biased about a situation based on something that happened to us 30 years ago.
Right.
But actually, if you can come and just say, okay, I can't deal with meetings today because I've got this thing going on, or can we do it tomorrow? And I think showing and demonstrating that sort of behavior, this is where I'm trying to tie this person in my life, where they're very good at just sort of saying, okay, I'm going through something. And then people kind of mirror that behavior. They feel comfortable enough just to share that slight insight. And that allows people to go, okay, the boss is having a bit of a moment. That's okay. It's not about me. We're not messing up. Just give them some distance. And that level, when you don't do that, I think of the opposite. That's like a pressure pot. People are like, why is the boss upset? Are we going to get fired? There's all these things going on. But the boss is just having a bad moment at work. If you can come in and just say, okay, and again, we have these extremes, bringing all the drama, bringing nothing whatsoever. But there is this nice area in between. You're not weak. You can still make decisions, but you can be honest and open to a point that allows people to feel they can, they have distance, and there is that regular emotional regularity. Okay, we're all human. We all have things going on in our lives. You don't need to know everything, but you've got enough that this doesn't impact you. And I think that I've never really seen it in companies. It's all very, we've got to be professional. We've got to be robots. And I think so much would be better if we could just connect with doing that. Even if that small introduction, I think that would really have a big impact on so many businesses.
Right. Yeah, and it changes things, because we learn that's effective communication. But that takes, knowing yourself, that takes understanding yourself, that takes working on yourself and understanding people. But once you get a hold of it, it is a lonely place in leadership and entrepreneurship. It is lonely because, as you said, you think you have to have it all figured out. And of course you don't have it all figured out. None of us have it all figured out. Life is not easy, and things are changing and all that. I remember I had a client, and he was such a great person, and he wanted to help everyone, and because he cared so much, he went into the extreme where he would listen to everyone's issues and problems. And that's it. And he was exhausted, and things were not really going at the pace that he would want them to go. So many times I realized, working through it with him, is that leaders and entrepreneurs, many times they imagine that if you care about people and if you try to create good relationships to, boost productivity and effectiveness, that means you're going to have to waste time to, be their coach or therapist. You have to listen to all their drama. And it's not the case. That's a big misunderstanding, I think, because of going to extremes again. You can ask, hey, I'm noticing something's off with you. Is there anything that you need? And then if they share or they overshare, you can stop that. If you're a mature, emotionally mature leader, you know how to stop it. And you know how to not let things evolve into a drama, but you know how to do it the right way, without burning bridges, but without letting that overcome the entire situation. So it's many times I say we like to go from one extreme to another because I think it's easier, right? The black and white type of thinking.
Yeah.
But the nuanced thinking may seem difficult at first, but once you get a hold of it, it's like second nature. It's like, do you remember when you first drove your car? It's like all those things to remember at once. I don't know about that. It's just too much information. And it's not enough that I have to remember everything in the car. I also have to look at the sign outside and, the weather, if it's raining and all, that's just too much. How many drivers did you ever hear saying it's too much? I'm not driving anymore. It's just being able to focus on so many, details. I've never heard that.
Yeah.
What people do is that they say, oh, I have to, at the beginning, it's difficult, but then I will pick it up. 1 year later, 2 years later, 2 years later, 5 years, 10 years later, nobody thinks of that. They just do it naturally. Yeah. So what if it's the same with emotions as well? What if it's the same with this work that we do? It's so practical. Once you learn it, it becomes second nature. You don't have to think about, oh, okay, what do I do with this guy? What do I do with that woman? How do I handle this? Because it's all in you. You have the tools. You have the knowledge. You have the understanding. So you just have to use the right tool. It's not one or the other. It's based on context. That's why I don't believe in recipes. Do this when you're in that situation. How could you possibly know what the situation of that person is?
Yeah.
So many factors and situations can change in that moment. You cannot possibly predict. And then people go out and they do the recipe and it didn't work. And they're like, okay, it's not working.
Yeah.
So what I like to do is to actually help people become their own master this way. It's not about becoming dependent by recipes, but to learn how to cook your own food. Once you have the foundation, right, you know what to do because you also know what works for you. You also know your personality. You also know what your strengths are. Not everything that works for one individual works for the other. Maybe your strengths are different. So we build on those strengths, and the weaknesses, we try to improve them so they can support the strengths, not be, not hindering them. So it's important to learn these things until they become second nature, and then it's so cool. I mean, everybody who has done this, they're like, oh my goodness, if I had only known. Just like drivers, I would never go back to not driving. Of course not.
I love that analogy because I think if you start from a place of not understanding emotions or it all being a thing, I would imagine it's quite a steep learning curve. But when I don't know if it's because I love driving that I love that analogy, because there's no way that I remember going, oh my God, how I'm supposed to be in control of this car and everything around me. And that was huge. And you're like, how am I ever going to get to the stage where this is something that I don't think about? But it happens a lot quicker than I remember it. It's through repetition and doing it and getting comfortable with things. And I love that because, it must feel difficult for the emotional side of things. But what great thing I think about driving, because it meant freedom for me. You could do pretty much anything, go anywhere. And it's just about sticking with it, and it gets easier and easier over time. I love that. The next thing, something you mentioned in the beginning, and you said you work one-on-one. And when you actually said that, so I assume you do, maybe do a workshop or something like that if required. But this one-on-one is interesting for me because personally, I don't like groups. So there's something changes for me when I'm in a group. I love this sort of interaction one-on-one. It allows me to zone in and just really connect. When there's multiple people, my brain goes, no, I've got to manage too much. But then I was thinking about the emotions, and I was thinking if you were to give say there was a workshop and you're trying to explain to 10 people about emotions, and like you just said, there's no formula for every single one, and everyone's different. I was thinking, I think it's okay to bring awareness of emotions, but if you're looking to understand, or if I say change the relationship with emotions, that doesn't seem to work well in a team setting, because everyone has their own dynamic. They're all showing up differently. They all have a different background. And yeah, it's okay to talk at a high level, but to do the deep work, I would suggest that's more of a one-to-one thing. That's just my interpretation of that. Is that accurate, or am I thinking differently?
So I think if you work in a group, it has to be a small group.
Okay.
If you
What's
have
a small group? What's
to,
a small group for
small
you?
group is like 6-8 people,
Okay.
maximum 10. That's a smaller group. And then as a facilitator, you have to make sure that there's a lot of interaction and a lot of understanding, and it goes longer term. It's definitely, if you do just a workshop, you raise awareness, which is wonderful, but it's just theory. And it's that moment, like we all go like, oh yeah, it makes so much sense. And like, in a month, if I ask, what did you hear? What did you remember? Not much. So when I have a workshop or I have a speaking engagement, I always make sure to tell people, okay, how will you implement this? And, ask a question to just, make sure to implement something that made sense to you. Because if you don't implement it, if you don't make it personal for you, you're just going to forget about it. Not because you don't care, but because it's just how our brains work. So even by knowing that information, fades away really fast, you can do something about it. That's why one-on-one has a different approach, because that's where you personalize. It's all about you and your experience. It's not about other people's experience. That's wonderful. But yours, it's different. Your cause for behaving the way you do is different. Your triggers are different. Your reaction to things is very different from others. You might think it's the same when you hear people and you nod along, but when you go deeper, in my experience, it's always different. So it's very important to make sure that you reach the personal side of people, even if you have a workshop. When I had a group, not workshop, that's where you raise awareness, but in a group, you need to be able to hear everyone. And make sure to learn from everyone's experience. But that takes a lot of energy, and it's very, very different. But when you provide one-on-one, there's nothing like it. And I know it's not practical. There are many people told me, oh my goodness, one-on-one, you can only reach few people. Yeah, that's okay. Because my goal is to reach select few people, and they become really wholesome leaders who can then create other leaders and other leaders, good leaders. And that's impact. So who's to measure how you create impact? You can talk to hundreds of people and have not major impact, only the hype. And what I'm looking for is for sustainable, deep work, because that's the kind of work that stays with you for years. And that's the kind of work that even if everything fails in your life, you have the tools to rebuild it. So there's no greater joy than when my clients say something like, even if I lose my business, I can rebuild it because it's in me. All these skills are in me. That's my purpose. So I don't know if that qualifies for impact or not, but that's one of the reasons I work one-on-one. And it takes more effort on both parts, mine and theirs. It takes more accountability, responsibility, and a sense of consequence, because in my view, as leaders, we have to have a sense of consequence. Because if we don't have a sense of consequence, we can just do whatever the heck we want with no consequence whatever, and that's dangerous territory. So I think that starts with me being responsible for my life, having a sense of consequence when I work with my clients. And, you know, to me, that's important. It may not make me rich, you know, but it brings so much joy and satisfaction to see practical things, you know.
When you were saying that, I got goosebumps about the impact, because that makes so much sense to me. Because, like you say, if you're talking to 100 people and no one takes it, you know, nothing goes in. But then you work with one person who's in charge of 100 people, and they can change. Like, again, it's that ripple effect. And you know, I'm in business myself, and you know, all the business books will say, yes, scale up and, you know, give the message. But the impact that you have is not the same, and that might not make financial sense, or it's more effort, but the difference that you can make and the impact is much greater. So I really love that, because a lot of people would go the other way and go, okay, I'm creating a business, but I would imagine you're in business for a lot longer than potentially they were. So I'm going to shift gears. I'm conscious of time, but there's so much I want to talk to you about, so much. So I'm going to bring a bias about, and I want you to see if there's something in my mind. So high performers. For some reason, I associate high performers with being able to suppress emotions. And I don't know why I think that. Is that a pattern that actually exists? Am I being unfair? Have I learned something unconsciously? Is there a relationship between high performers and switching emotions off? Is that changing? Do you see any connection?
I would say, before I share what the studies show, I would say, how long can you handle that, you know, suppressing emotions and being like a robot? Because if we look at many examples, people can do that for a while. You can be the robot, you can be the bull going ahead, you have your target, you have to reach that target. But at what cost? So I think it comes down at, you know, what is the price that you're paying? Are you willing to pay this price? Are you willing to, you know, maybe completely ruin your life but have financial gain? Because that's the ultimate thing, to have the financial gain. Nobody's going to be a high performer only if it's not for the financial gain or to proving themselves. Of course, there can be other causes for this kind of behavior, but that's for another story. What studies show, on the other hand, is that to be a high performer long term, and to be in it long term, to have that sustainable achievement, right? To become successful, stay successful, have the good reputation, people wanting to, you know, work for you. That takes emotional intelligence. That takes social skills. That takes your capacity to be a good communicator, to make good decisions, to create the good relationships that can help you support your success and so on. So long term, I would say, you need the emotional part, but the emotional intelligence, not being emotional, because we're all emotional, but not all of us are emotionally intelligent, which is very different. So if you want to stay long term, I think you have to invest in this part as well. Or, again, depends on what you want to leave behind. If you want to leave behind is, you know, being rich, but at any cost, then yeah, sure, that's a way of doing things as well. I think it all comes down to what you want. What is your purpose? What do you want to build? What is the type of legacy you want to leave? Because there are many types of legacies. You know, not every, you know, when people say values, I'm very careful to saying good values or, you know, healthy values, because there are other type of values as well. And, you know, there's nothing you can do there. It's okay. Some people want to opt for that. Not my business to judge. Would I do that? No, I wouldn't. Would I suggest doing that? Your decision.
Yeah.
But if you want to stay long term, I mean, if we look at history, I love looking at history. I love looking at people who, maybe it was hard, but they left something meaningful behind, something good, something society could actually build on. So now I'm thinking, the question is, what you leave behind, is it something that others can build on? Or is it something that it was just your gain?
Yeah, that's
I don't know.
or you have such a brilliant way of phrasing things. I think that's fantastic. It's yeah. So I'm going to leave this with the last thought. So I had a conversation recently with a coach friend of mine, and we got onto the subject of she's a coach to leaders, and we had this conversation about athletes and business, and we were comparing the two, and we said basically, yeah, in athletics, any sort of sports, there's coaches. There are people that will help you. It's not that you're doing bad. It's just you're doing really well, and you just need to do. You want to get to the next level or something like that. Team sports, coaches. Athletes, I think, are like tennis stars. They all have coaches, and it's very very prominent in the media that they have coaches. They're celebrated. You often see them together.
Right.
In business, it's almost like a no, or a coach comes in when there's a crisis or a big problem. And I love speaking to people like you that are very passionate about what they do, but also want to help on an ongoing basis. And I think business would be so much better if they realized that we can't do it all ourselves. We weren't conditioned to know it all or do it all. So we do need people like you to come in and just help us understand, okay, what's going on? Okay, you don't have this awareness, and there's no judgment in it. It's actually a strength to say, okay, I just want the best for me and for my people, or however you get there. But we don't. I think coaching is sometimes this shame thing, or think that we can't do it, or okay, we should have all the answers internally. But I think there's such a huge value in reaching out to people like you in an area, especially like emotions, something that really is not talked about, or it's just misunderstood in such a way. So yeah, I would encourage all those people in companies just to connect with people like you and just see what value that you can bring to people, because I think it's, not to put too much extremes, but there's night and day, like you talked about, if you want business for longer term rather than this just burnout, we need help, we need support, and that's not a weakness. That's actually a strength to understand that we're all human at the end of the day, and we do need coaching. So
this kind of behavior is absolutely human nature, and I totally understand it. In fact, when I understood what's happening, it was like peace of mind. The stages of change. It's pre-contemplation. When people don't believe that they can change, they don't think they have a problem to change, then they won't do anything about it, because nothing is wrong, even though everyone around you will tell you, hey, this behavior is not right. If you think it's right, then you don't need anything. But then there's the next stage, which is the contemplation phase, where you contemplate, is this, what are the benefits, what are the downsides? And if the benefits come up, like, okay, I think I have more benefits than downsides, that's where people will start looking for a coach, or improving, because they understand, I don't want to stay here anymore, the downsides are just too big. And the pain of staying the same it becomes bigger than the pain of change, because both involve pain, right? We have to put in the effort. It's human nature. We don't like it. We like to be comfortable. We like it, that's why people don't ask for help unless it's very bad. It's very few. I had this as well. I had entrepreneurs reaching out to me saying, hey, I want to build something really great, and I know that I have to, set the right foundation in my life and in my team's life. So, I had this kind, thankfully I had this kind of examples too. But most of us will reach out for help when it's very bad. And this is the reason why we don't believe we can change, or we don't know, we don't think there's anything wrong with us. But when we do reach that, this is too painful to stay the same. Then we reach out for help. And then we go to the preparation stage. And guess what? Only the fourth stage is the action. Just to, when we read that in social media, all you need to do is act. And my question is always, rolling my eyes a bit, and I'm thinking, how on earth do we expect people to act when they haven't even gone through the rest of the stages of understanding what needs to change and preparing to change a habit? You cannot just switch off a habit and switch on a new one. Oh my goodness, wouldn't that be great, to have that? But we don't do that. We need to, we know the neuroplasticity. We know the brain can develop new neural networks. But that takes time. New habits to develop, it takes time.
Yeah.
So then after we get to the fourth stage of action, after that, we go to the maintenance stage, where we maintain the new habit, the new behavior that we developed. And even there's a risk, because we can slide back down into preparation maybe, or action, and so on. But that's normal. Studies show that it's normal to just go back there from a different perspective and go back up again, right?
Okay.
Until it's really settled. So understanding this, I always share this with my clients as well, because many times they're like, oh my goodness, I failed. Now I'm back. It's over. You're not back. You're not at square one. You're just going round again until you can go back up again. So, it's okay. But you need somebody who can look at you objectively, and in a confidential place. And I'm not shocked that people are not reaching out. You know why? Because many coaches and therapists, and they will not like me for this, they break confidentiality. Even therapists, even coaches. So it's very important that you do not break confidentiality. And that has to do with the type of person you are.
Yeah.
You have to provide a safe space. That's not negotiable. You have to provide confidentiality. That's not negotiable. You have to be there for your client. That's not negotiable. When clients have this, then improvement and change can happen. So, like in any field, we just mess up, some of us.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But if we bring order in all of our lives, and if we try to do our best and not negotiate certain things, you don't negotiate these 3 I said, not with yourself, not with anybody, then people will come. And then people will, want to change because they are safe. Nobody will change if they don't trust you and they don't feel safe.
Yeah.
It's just how it is.
And I think definitely around emotions, people need to feel safe before they start talking. That's because it feels a vulnerable area maybe to talk about at first. So safety is, I'm sure it works in all the other fields, but for me, certainly, I think it's paramount. Safety, and it's a safe environment is,
you can't do it without safety. Yeah. The first rule of parenting is create a safe environment for your child. If there's no safe environment at home or in your relationship, you will not have a relationship with that child, not for long, and he will not be open to you. You cannot correct that child. But if there's safety, if they know I can always trust mom and dad, since they are small, even if I mess up and I tell them, they will be upset, they will not like what I did, but they will still love me. They will, they will still be there for me. When you have these things, so it's in us, it's human nature. Unless we feel safe, we will not be honest. If we're not honest, there's nothing we can do. So it goes back to, understanding basic human behavior and needs.
Yeah.
That's what I believe.
I think that is an amazing message to leave this on. I am so grateful for this conversation. Like I said, I kind of wanted to selfishly have this just because there's many threads and many things even in my own life. And I would love to maybe do a round 2 because I think there's so much to explore. But thank you so much for your time. Thank you. I don't take this for granted. You showing up for me and having this conversation, so much appreciated. In terms of people getting in contact with you, because I can't imagine that people don't listen to this and don't want to then get in contact with you, just to understand more about you, the work you do, and how you can help them or their business. So what's the best place for people to find you? Is it a website or is it on LinkedIn? What would you suggest?
Both. They can reach out on LinkedIn, or they can reach out by email. I have the website, DigDeeperLeaders.com. And I just want to say that I always encourage, I made that post as well on LinkedIn. I always encourage people to reach out and just talk, have a talk. There's no strings attached. Many times people are afraid to reach out because, okay, if I talk, then, she's expecting me to, I don't expect anything, because it's about first noticing what the chemistry is. I mean, you might not even like me. Or, I might notice that you don't need a coach. Maybe you need a therapist. So I might recommend that you reach out to a therapist, or so many things. It's so important to just sometimes have the meaningful conversation and see if we would be a good fit. Maybe what I have to offer is not even what you need. And then you can find out. And I am the first one to say, hey, maybe this is not what you need. Maybe it's something else. What do you think? So, because my goal is to find the people who are actually ready, are actually willing, and, they want to actually work on themselves and have my support, because I'm in it. I'm really 100% in it when I do that. So I encourage people to just reach out and just get to know each other. Even if we don't work together, at least we have the great conversation, which is always great. I mean, we all need a good, meaningful conversation in this day and age.
That's why I'm doing this thing. So,
right?
Yeah.
It's amazing. Just like how I met you, it was so amazing. So thank you so much for inviting me. I enjoyed it so much. I mean, it's so easy to talk to you, and you were a wonderful host. So thank you for that, for the invitation and for the great conversation. We had a meaningful one, didn't we?
Yeah, for sure. And whenever I get goosebumps, I know I've touched on the subject or heard something great. So, and I have to call that out, because that's the way that I'm finding that something really resonates with me. So, yeah, absolutely. And just to echo your point, I mean, I've been in therapy, as I said, and not in a negative way, but it's really important to work with the people that you want to. And I respect so many people that actually say, okay, this isn't the type of work I do, or I can recommend someone else, or I think there is this, I think that resistance, people forget, they think, oh, I'm going to have a conversation, so I'm going to sign up for something. But it's not, when you meet people like you, it's not about that. It's about the conversation, and then working through, okay, does it make sense for you, for me, etc. And so, just to echo your point, really, just have that conversation with you, because it might be a game changer, or it might be that you could recommend something else, or, it's something else. So having that conversation has zero downside and every upside. So just have that conversation. To anyone listening to this, if they think it's around emotions, get in contact with you 100%. So yeah. Brilliant. You've made my day. You've really made my day. So thank you very much for this.
My pleasure.
I'm sure I'm going to be tapping you up for a round 2, 100%. So yeah, thank you very much for your time.
Yes, thank you.
All right, take care. Bye.
Bye.